When you go through here, you can take pictures any place you want to. I don't mind at all. And when you go down that hallway, which I just see that I forgot to turn the light on, the pictures on the top are all from Nebraska, and they're different structures that they build, which you already know. So when you go out, if you look at the map, you can find the rivers. If you spot a river like Saline River, Salt Lake City, right here in Lincoln, they have more sightings in Lincoln than the whole entire state. But right here, right through the center of Lincoln, is Salt Creek. There's your answer.
Connection.
So see, if it just takes a little tiny bit of homework, not that much. So we look for that, and then you want to look for the structures. So if you see all of those clues, kind of in an area, you know it's a Bigfoot area for sure. So anyway, all the pictures on the top are from Nebraska, and all the ones on the bottom are from Colorado. And they are exactly the same. The only difference is Nebraska is more the trees, and Colorado, if they bend a tree over like an arch, in Nebraska, they'll bend it over, put a log on top, so this is not ever going to stand up straight again. And in Colorado, they just lay boulders on top. It's the same, exactly the same. So in this first room here, that is my bone room. And it's got a lot of different kinds of artifacts that are definitely Bigfoot, but it's got some that aren't exactly. And there's kind of lots of clues that are intermingled. And I just think there's so many researchers out now, and so much is going, that maybe in a year or 2 or 5 years, I think it's kind of like a great big giant puzzle, and they learn something here or here and here and here. I just think a lot of this information is coming together that we didn't know before. So that's the bone room, and then as you go down the hall, on the right-hand side, there's a black door. That's a restroom. On the left-hand side is a room for Patty. So you know who Patty is? And Sassy. I always thought she had a baby, so I just gave her one. Anyway, 2 weeks ago, Thursday, did you know it was the 55th anniversary since Roger Patterson filmed her?
Yeah, we've met Bob Gimlin a couple times.
Me too.
Talked to him.
Me too. On the 50th, in Willow Creek, the town right there where Bluff Creek is, they had a Rip Snorton celebration for the 50th, and so I got invited. I went to that. That was when I first met him. Nice guy.
Super nice guy.
I love that guy. And so anyway, I said, Bob, how'd you like to come to Nebraska and be a speaker? And you know him, he goes, well, honey, I would just like that. And he did. So he's been here, a lot of the other guys. But anyway, the room on the end, I actually walked down Bluff Creek where she walked. There were some guys that took us down there. It took them 7 years to find the exact place where she walked. And it was so beautiful there. It was October 20th, which it was almost exactly like the weather here that time of year, except they were more up in the mountains, but the leaves were yellow and gold and orange and red. It was so beautiful. So I took those pictures for you, and those over there on the guest book.
Oh, neat.
So anyway, that's Patty's room, and then when you come out, you can just follow the arrows on the floor, and it will take you, there's a few exhibits back there. And when you get, that's where the braided horses are. I will tell you a little bit more about the horses. It's really interesting. And then you probably saw that other little building when you walked in, 10 feet away. That's another little small addition to this. So I will take you over there then.
Where we're at, the months of September through November is our most active time frame. Is there something similar to that here? Do you notice?
I don't know. I think we are fairly consistent all year long, but with where you are, well, and here too, they're preparing for winter.
Right.
So they're probably gathering more. I think like us, well, I don't think that basically they migrate. I think they're there all year long. But maybe their lifestyle might change a little. So what do you think about that?
I'm open. You know, I don't like to just assume one thing when I'm out there.
Yeah,
So.
and see, for me to answer that question, I don't know a lot about Washington. I did go there to a camp out, a national one.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's basically where I was, except for then I went to Bluff Creek,
Right.
which is south of there.
Right.
But why did you say that? What did they do that made you think that?
Because we get more vocalizations and interactions during those times of year than we do like in the summertime or
I
in the
wonder
winter.
that, you know, they also have the babies in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we see a spike in the spring and then it dies off in midsummer, spikes again in the fall, and then it dies off and then it spikes again in January just for a short period.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Huh. I'd never heard anybody say that before. I don't know.
Huh.
But the only thing I could think of when you said in the fall is they do have the babies in the spring. So is it like a different kind of a call, like communication, like they're looking for a girlfriend?
I don't know.
You've speculated many things.
We get the whoops in the early fall. We get the screams around October, November. Like really intense, like screams.
Wow.
So.
Do you live right in the center of the state? Ooh.
No, we're in eastern Washington.
Eastern? So
We're right below the Canadian border,
Yeah,
so
that would be-
we're right here.
Oh, yeah.
We're right off the Columbia River too. So
Ooh. Boy, perfect spot.
yes.
And salmon? Don't they have salmon?
They're introducing them.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they did. Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of that would be cyclical, but I mean, I just don't know that much about Washington. But anyway, so Patty is down there. You can go to those exhibits. Over in this corner over here is where the braided horses are. So when you get over there, I'll just tell you a little bit more information about the braids, if that's okay.
Yeah.
That was in Washington State where we had that camp out. And I can't think of the name of the park. It was good.
I found several looking just like that.
Good something park, state park. Can't remember now. But that was the people I were with. That was the tallest one they'd ever seen, and that one was about 75 feet tall. So, have you seen them like that size? Wow.
Yeah.
Boy.
Especially just the three, just like that.
Yeah. I know it. It was. See, that's me right there.
Oh wow.
And I was standing up. Of course, I'm short, but and my husband took the picture, and that way you could kind of get an idea how tall it was, because I'm like 5 feet tall, not quite. And so, you know, then I just went 5, 10, da-da-da. It's like 75 feet tall. So that was a big one, really big. I'd never seen one that big anywhere.
Does that look familiar to you? This picture?
Yeah.
Gosh, you guys are lucky. That was Washington. That one over there was Colorado. That was about 30 miles.
We have seen that, not as many, but we have seen stuff similar.
I haven't seen hardly any either. That was about the only one I'd ever seen.
The ones we've seen have been on top of old tree stumps.
That's what this is. You can't tell it. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
See that? But I don't think it was a stump. I think it was put there because it looked like a piece of driftwood, because it had, you know, the arms kind of going out. So I'm not sure about that. And then the other thing that was really weird, did you look at that poster in that back room where it said, I thought it was burial mounds?
Yes.
That was not too far from there, maybe 30 feet or so. But, and the squirrels had done it, and I thought this was unusual. They had taken pine cones like that, and they had just chewed them up, chewed them up, chewed them up. It was like sawdust. And that whole mound was like, it was all those pine cones. And I thought, now that looks really weird. You know, I always look for things that are weird,
Mm-hmm.
that don't fit in the landscape. And so that was right there. There was a lot. There was, and see, in the back, I think, in the way back, I think that was an arch that went across. Like that, I think. Can't remember now, but anyway, that whole area was just full of things like that. And it had the X's and the arches, but nowhere near. I mean, they were about like maybe your height or a little taller.
Right.
So, and you know, a lot of people walk through and they'll walk, oh yeah, like that, and then that's it. But they haven't learned anything and they don't know about the braided horses. Just looking at the pictures is not enough. So I like to come in here. I'm really glad just a small group right now. And so anyway, I had a small group. This was just a year ago, and there was a guy standing exactly where you are. And so the one thing I like to say is the braided horses are almost always, 90% of the time, it's the females. I don't know why that is. And they braid their manes. And so when I said that, this guy that was standing there, he goes, yep, yes, sir, that, And so I kind of chuckled, and then I said, the other 10% is the males. But they don't braid their manes, they braid their tails. And I don't know why that is. If you would see them off from a distance, you could tell if a horse's tail was braided. And this guy goes, yep, that's right. And so I stopped and I said to him, you know every single thing that I'm saying here, don't you? And he goes, And you know what? He did. Boy, he was smart. Really, not a smart aleck, smart. And so I said to him, are you an Indian? Not to insult him, but his skin coloring is kind of that bronze color, and black hair. And he said, yes. And so I said, what tribe are you from? And he said, the Sioux. So what that means here is South Dakota, the whole state, there are tribes and reservations all over. There's the Rosebud Sioux, the Santee Sioux, that's the Crow Creek Sioux. I mean, there's a lot of them. And so I was thinking that's where he's from. And so anyway, what he said, this is so important, I think. He said, of all of the braids that I have in here, he said, this one right here is the most significant to the Indians. He said, it doesn't matter what tribe they're in, they will recognize that because this piece right through the center signifies God. And I never knew that before, ever. He said, so that is God. And then the braid on this side is a man, and this is a woman. And so in the Bible, in Ecclesiastics, it talks about where 3 strands are braided together, that 3 are stronger than 1. You know that? I do too. And he said, that's what it means to us. He said, but to the Indians or the Native Americans, it means exactly the same thing to them as it does to us. And he said, a lot of the tribes, they will say God, but a lot of them will say like the Great Spirit or different words that they have, but it's the same thing.
Right.
And some of them will say whatever is in their native language, whatever that word is. He said, but it's the same. That's what that means.
It's a universal meaning.
Yeah. And I never, all this time, I never knew that. I told people about the braids, but not that. And that's a really important part. And so anyway, he said, Don Monroe said to me, you should put up a sign. I will give you $1,000 if you can duplicate one of these. I said, Don, how about if we make it 100? But nobody can anyway. And this guy said, if you have a horse's mane and say it's this long, they will braid down about 3/4 of the way. and then they will tie a knot, and it's so tight. I don't care what you do, you cannot untie that knot. That's why they have to cut them.
Mhm.
And they'll cut just a little piece like that. Doesn't have to be very much, but it'll be out of their mane right next to their neck, which it will grow back
Right.
in a year or so. That's the only bad part. And he said after they tie that knot, then they start making loops and they start braiding back up again. So that's another thing. You just can't duplicate it. And I didn't know that before. And so I was standing here talking to this guy, and it was so interesting. And I just went like this, and I go, look, there's God. I looked at this braid 200 times at least, and I never knew what I was looking at. So he told me that, and I saw it. And this is one of my favorite braids, because right here, that is a knot, and that is so tight,
Mhm.
and it's so hard. And right here, there's another one. This one is even harder than that one. So come over here. Just feel that. Squeeze right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now go up here. Squeeze right there. That's even harder. You can't untie it at all. Here, you can try it. Do that.
I definitely didn't get that from rolling around in a field.
No. No, and you know what? If you look at these braids, if it was true that it's because they were rolling around, I used to have a horse, and afterwards, feel it right there. That is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I would ride her, I always brushed her down. She'd be sweaty, under her saddle. She'd be so nice and clean. First thing she'd do, she'd go 10 feet, go out, lay down, roll around in the dirt. And I just took all that off. She'd be covered with dirt and dust and straw and pieces of grass and all kinds of stuff like that. And if you look at all these braids, they are clean. They do not have one thing. If that was really true, if they rolled around, they'd have all that
I
stuff.
mean,
all
you even look
knotted
at wild horses and they're not
Yeah.
like that.
You know, I'm almost wondering, because I've gotten reports where people have described seeing things like dreadlocks.
Uh-huh.
Could it be braids and not actually dreadlocks?
Yes. And I think that word is kind of interchangeable. It depends on where you're from or, your background a lot.
Right.
But those aren't dirty either. They don't have straw and cockleburs and
Yeah.
and
wound
grass
up in it.
and all that in them. And even the dust. These aren't that. I mean, there's no dust in that.
Uh-huh.
It's clean. So that part doesn't really make any sense. So anyway, that was what he said. There's one little piece, I left it. That was the only thing there. But the rest of it, it isn't. They're all clean. And so if you look over here, here's another braid, and see, there's God. Just like he said. And if you look, can you see these little tiny knots right here?
Yeah.
Loops, and then that's where they start going back up again. So if you look, you can see there's loops, just like he said. And then this one is even smaller. Whoop. But it's still God. And if you look on this one, you can see those loops where they're going back up again. And so every single one, they're all alike. And what I think is, it doesn't matter if the braid is big or small, they're still the same. Exactly. And so then, are you guys familiar with Igor Burtsev?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know him?
I've met him.
Okay, from Moscow.
Yep.
He was at our convention, our conference a year ago. And so in 1965, Igor, he's got a bunch of friends that are from around Siberia, and they're archaeologists and paleontologists, and he's an anthropologist, all these guys. And so they had an old semi, and they took the trailer part and they parked it in Siberia, and they kind of turned it into like a camper.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine what that looks like.
yeah.
But anyway, they would go up there and spend a couple of weeks every year, and usually go back a couple times in the spring and summer. And so when Igor went there in 1965 with those guys, the first thing he ran into was the braided horses. And so there's his first time in Siberia. He even had hair then. And when he went back to Moscow, he ran into the braided horses again. And so Igor has been studying the horses since 65, but Don, that's him, he's been studying them for over 40 years now. And so when Igor came to our conference last year, and I told Don that, he said, I'm coming. That's it. So in the basement of my house, I had a big workshop and all my books, and I had 2 guest bedrooms. So Igor came to one bedroom, and Don was here in the other bedroom for 10 days straight. The neighbor, 100 miles an hour, I'd walk through, hi guys. That's all I did. But you know what? They both brought a lot of pictures to show each other. Guess what? They were the same.
Same stuff.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Exactly the same. So this horse braiding, it's not just new here. It's not just a fake here. It's all over the whole world. There's braided horses. And so I thought that was really, I'm so glad they told me that. Because before, I would show people the pictures and I would just tell them about Don, a little bit that I knew, but that's not hardly anything compared to the whole story. Now, I have one more question for you. Can you spend a little bit more time here?
How much more time?
How much more time?
20 minutes?
Sure.
20 minutes, Kara? Okay.
Okay, then go sit back down.